Good morning. Hello, PGA members and extended family. Good morning, good afternoon, possibly as well. My name is Kwan Latif Hill, and I'm one of the co-leads of the Women's Impact Network, which is one of the working groups made of producers and multi-hyphenate creatives. We're so excited to be celebrating Women's History Month with you all and couldn't be more excited that you joined us today. Please welcome my other co-leads, Jenny Halper and Hawini Kakesa.
Thank you, Kwan, and thank you to the PGA events team, to the PGA leadership, and our incredible panelists for joining us, and to our moderator, Jacqueline, for your support to bring today's panel to life. To everybody joining virtually, we are really excited to come together for this important and timely conversation entitled Sustaining Careers, Elevating Stories, Women Shaping the Future of Film and Television.
Thank you, Kwan and Jenny. We want to remind you to please share any questions in the chat, and we will get to them during the Q&A. Myself, Jenny, and Kwan will also be in the chat with you throughout the panel. So here to guide today's conversation is a dynamic voice in film and television. She's the awards editor at Rotten Tomatoes, host of the Award Tour podcast, and host of Make It Universal's Seen on the Screen podcast. Please join me in welcoming Jacqueline Coley.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I am so excited to chat with this incredible group of dynamic women who have done so much for film and television. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce Robbie Brenner, president of Mattel Films, Laura Eason, showrunner and producer, 3 women, Debra Martin Chase, producer and CEO of Martin Chase Productions, Simone social impact producer, Lily the Tail, and founder of 4 Impact Productions. Hello, ladies, and welcome. I want to go ahead and get started today because in getting ready for this panel, I was looking at all of your incredible careers. I mean, for those of you that I was just getting to know through the course of this panel, and for those of you that I've followed throughout other things that you've produced, I thought it would be interesting if we began with some of the things that you sort of had to not overcome, but the things along your career that ended up being a guiding force for where you got today. Because I find often when we reflect on our career, it's those decisions that you don't necessarily mark when they happen that end up being so informative of how you were able to be successful later on in your career. So if you could, and Robbie, I'll start with you, give me an example of something that you reflected on throughout your career as like, you know what, that actually set me up in a way that I could have never imagined.
I mean, for me, I would say making Dallas Buyers Club was probably, one of the most seminal, not moments because it took 2 decades of my life. But I mean, I think that just believing in something, staying with something, even when every single door closes on you, when people tell you like, this isn't relevant, nobody cares, nobody wants to see this movie, just knocking on every door and you're just met with, doors closing, and just sort of staying with it because you believe in it and you're passionate about it. And ultimately, you just kind of get little wins along the way. I think, and it's, it's not a race, it's a marathon. And sometimes to tell great stories, it takes a long time. It has to be sort of the right moment. It has to be with the right people. I've had movies, I'm sure we all have television shows that have fallen apart and come back together 10 years later. So there's so many sort of, influences and confluences in making art and so many people. So I would just say that having just sort of the will to stay with that and to believe in that story, and ultimately just, witnessing sort of the outcome. I mean, I watched it on the plane the other day. I hadn't seen it in a very long time. And I was like, this is a really good movie. I'm so proud of this movie. So I would say that sort of always brings me back to kind of my roots and the reason why I do this and the need to tell great stories that matter and that inspire and that affect people. So that's probably my touchstone.
I love that. And I will also say, I love how you were watching your own thing. I love when people are like on the plane and like watching their old movies. It's like, or their television shows. It's my favorite. Laura, I'll go ahead and bring it over to you. If there was one of those things that you've sort of reflected on that maybe at the time didn't strike you as beneficial, but when you look back on it, you're like, this really set me up.
I was going to say something different, and then off of what Robbie said, it sparked something else for me, which is I come to TV and film through playwriting. I was originally a playwright for quite a long while, and I had been writing plays that were very big cast and had floods in them and were very, very difficult to produce. And I had a moment where I really feel like now in retrospect became the moment when I really pulled in that producing perspective and began to look at my career both as a writer and as a producer. And that I looked a little bit out at the marketplace and said, what is getting produced? And I was having a hard time getting traction on a couple of my things. And I decided to write a two-hander, play with two, which is two characters. And that play ended up really launching nationally in a way that my other plays had not quite has made as much impact. And it was that play that got me my first staffing gig and really opened all the doors to film and television. But it was being able to look at the marketplace and still write something that I felt had all of the integrity, all of the truth, all of my passion, was still as artistic as anything else I'd ever made, with as much of myself and my heart in it, but also had an eye on what realistically out in the world could possibly get made, have more likelihood, more chance of that. And that has been a really important lesson that has continued through the rest of film and television, because as we know, we're in a for-profit situation. And that means there is a marketplace to consider. And I think learning to balance the reality of that, but still staying really true to yourself as an artist and to as a writer, what you want to say can sometimes be a really difficult balancing act. But it was that show that really showed me that it was an important conversation to be having with projects and with myself, really.
I appreciate that. Simone, I'm going to bring it to you next. Same question. Oh, you're on mute, Simone.
Great, there we go. So I also come from this with a very different background. So for me, the larger purpose of things has always driven me. It's kind of in my DNA. And I started out in government and politics and working in DC in the White House, and really learning how media and messages impact people's lives. That was kind of the foundation of how then I got into television and then now in independent filmmaking. So it's always been that driver for me, is to understand where we come from in terms of a broader perspective, and how does the media play in that, and the purpose. And for me, it's been focused on issues concerning women. And so that has driven me both from a public sector world and then all into my filmmaking now. So women's issues, they have their flows up and down, and now we're in it again. So it's what's driving me. And it started way back when.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And Miss Debra Martin Chase, ma'am, I just think about your career in particular, and I think about the things that you can reflect on, because just the idea of when you started producing, like just the things that you've probably seen. So I don't even know how many different ones you could maybe pick, but you could, I mean, I'm just saying, this is a Black woman who's been producing television since the 90s.
And that's where I'm going to go with the answer to the question. 'Cause I think for me, one of the biggest challenges was just getting established in the business. I'd always loved film and television. My dad was a huge film and television buff, but I didn't know anybody in the business. I didn't know anybody in business, period. I didn't see anybody in the business who looked like me. And my motivation more than anything else for wanting to get in was because growing up, I didn't see people who looked like me and you and felt like me and you on screen. And I understood from a very early age how impactful these images that we saw on screen were, both in terms of reinforcing stereotypes and breaking down stereotypes. So, but I went to law school because I didn't know anybody in the business. I didn't know how to get in. I practiced law at big firms and big corporations, hated it, and just got to that point in my life where I was like, this is my dream. And if I don't go for it, I didn't want to wake up at this age saying, if only I woulda, coulda, shoulda, what if. But what I didn't realize, I really didn't realize how there was nobody who looked like me wanting to do what I set out to do. So when I got to Hollywood, I think, because I had to work so hard, I, pretty much was the first Black woman to produce a major studio movie. Again, I didn't realize I just wanted to make movies because other people did, and that's what my dream was. I became the first Black woman to have a producing deal at a major studio. I didn't even know until after the fact. My lawyer told me that's what it was. And it's just because I was determined to establish myself and whatever it took to get there, to get the images on screen, to get my message out there, I was willing to do. And so it was actually very helpful that I had another career because I'd been a very successful lawyer. So this wasn't about my ego. It wasn't about, I didn't need like the affirmation from the industry because I wasn't going to get it. And I had a purpose and a mission. So it gave me grit and motivation.
Wow. And that kind of grit and motivation, I think, is something that everyone is feeling the need to harness right now in our industry. I mean, everyone understands this is a very difficult time, whether, the recovery from the dual strikes, post-COVID, just the ever-changing entertainment landscape. I know now the roadblocks are different, the fights are different, and then there's the whole. We haven't even talked about, just the daily news and everything that, kind of happens that way. So I'd love for you all to kind of discuss what are the roadblocks that are new, that have happened in the past, maybe 5 to 10 years, that are things that you didn't necessarily have to combat at the first part of your career, that everybody who's sort of trying to produce film and television is having to deal with now. And Simone, I'll start with you.
Wow. So for me, I've been at this kind of advocacy work my whole career, right? And so now film and art is another piece of that. So my perspective is, we haven't, these issues that we're facing, again, they've gone in cycles, right? And so I've seen them for my whole career and lifespan now. Now there's maybe some different shapes and forms of it. And so the issues have always been there, right? And in terms of advocacy for social issues. What's different now, or for me, in terms of the marketplace and the industry, right? When I first started my company with Impact Producing, like, it was very new. It was very, very new. And, this concept of what do you do with the film beyond the screen, right? How do you engage audiences, and how do you invite conversation, and over the course of the past 10, 15 years, it started, the industry is starting to get there a little bit more on welcoming in this kind of broader concept of how we really want to use film and television and media and art to have some conversation. But then for financing, that's a big piece of what I've seen change, where, bringing in very diverse and broadening out beyond the traditional film financing road. And so I've seen those changes happen. And it's also it's a necessity now that, we can't just, rely on that one funnel for funding. We really need to kind of be broadening that out. And so for me, that's exciting to see. And I know it's scary for filmmakers too, that have been in that traditional kind of way of getting their projects made. So I'm all about the expansion and the broader world and bringing that into our filmmaking.
Laura, I'm going to bring this one to you because everyone here has had recent projects, but with three women especially, I think a lot of folks listening would like to know, especially with your trajectory from your career, how you started basically doing, story editing, but now you've got your own show. For a lot of folks, as long as that sort of timeline was, they'd be jealous of that right now. They'd be like, okay, how do I get there, having your own show? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how Three Women came to be and how you were able to also get it cast with such an incredible cast.
Well, we are very fortunate in that Three Women is based on a New York Times bestselling book that came out in 2019. So it also was really on the heels of the big Me Too moment and people really saying like, yes, of course, women front and center. It's a given. These are stories we should be telling. So we had a lot of momentum when we went into making the show, which I started working on it in 2020. So it was quite a long journey. And I think, as is the case, the reason why it really came to pass for me personally is through an executive at Showtime, Jesse Dikovitsky, who's a big champion of mine. And like so many things and so many projects, it really was, having worked on another show at Showtime where we made the show, her just seeing my work on that show, really believing in me and being an advocate for me. And although, as women, sometimes we have to do a lot more work before we get the chance. Still, you need someone to, advocate for you and say she can do it. She can jump from being a co-EP to show running. And that's what made the difference, is her and Amy Israel at Showtime said, yeah, she's the one. And then I met with Lisa Taddeo, the writer of the book. And it ultimately was her, her along with the network's decision to choose me to be the showrunner, because the book obviously was very beloved, and it was very important to Lisa that she had a partner that she felt like was really the right fit. But I would say all along the way, it was having these key people believing in me and helping me get to the next level. And I think you prove that from working really, 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 really hard, and sometimes harder than other people that you're on staff with. And it doesn't always feel fair that you have to sometimes, do more, show up more, try and be better. But that's, unfortunately still a little bit the way that it is. And, as Debra was saying, just like grit and perseverance, and then being very lucky to be the beneficiary of people, putting giving you the ladder to climb up, as they say.
Yeah, and I actually kind of want to twist the question a little bit for Debra and Robbie. And Robbie, I'll start with you because Laura brought up a great point about the grit, the determination, and the perseverance. Both her and Simone had careers prior to this. Debra, you were talking about this. But to have a sustainable career, and both you and Debra have had 20+ year careers, although you started when you're 2, I know, careers in Hollywood. Kids. There is more than just the grit. There's more than the talent, and there's even more than the luck. I think there is a certain sauce and a certain recipe to continuing to be somebody that people want to work with and want to continue to work with. And so I'd love for you to maybe talk about some of those other things that you think are key to not just a good career, but one that it can be long lasting. And Robbie, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's about finding stories that feel different, that have a reason to exist. I mean, everything that I sort of embark on, I try to find like, what is this sort of unexpected way of telling the story? Who is that filmmaker that has that sort of vision that we haven't seen before, that's going to bring something like wholly unique and bold and singular to this, you know, story that we're telling, and that's going to make it really stand out. And I think now more than ever in the world, with so much, you know, noise of everything between what's going on in the world and just so much content with streaming and to phones and Snapchat, and everybody's just attached, just like an appendage. It's like we can't even focus, we can't even look at people. So to actually sit and watch a movie or a television show, you have to really engage the audience. So for me, you know, it's about, I think, coupling material, you know, finding things that feel like they're interesting, like they're different, like they can penetrate, like, as I said before, as they have a reason to exist, that they're going to sort of stand the test of time in some sort of way and be indelible and inspire people, that they're going to feel kind of sticky, as I like to say. So I'd like to say that that's sort of like my superpower, is kind of bringing interesting filmmakers, whether it was Jean-Marc Vallée on, you know, Dallas Buyers Club, or Greta Gerwig doing Barbie, you know, things that feel really different and unexpected. And I think, you know, you can see kind of in the world, whether, you know, looking at the Anora, you know, that just won the Oscar, you know, that had such a, you know, such a point of view. It was such a, you know, an intimate story. It was so raw. It was so real. You know, he's such an incredible filmmaker, you know, but that's like an independent movie. You wouldn't think like, wow, this is going to win the best picture. But I think people really yearn and long for stories that do feel like wholly original and authentic. And so I'd say that I really try to lean into that, that's something that I consciously think about every day when I'm developing film or television. What is going to make this, what is going to make people want to see this more than anything else and sort of stand out, and be great. So that's sort of what I strive for, in everything that I'm creating.
Love that. Miss Debra Martin Chase, ma'am, I would definitely be asking you this for a sustainable career. What other things besides grit, determination, talent, and luck?
So, two-part answer. The first is, for me, theme and message are really important in everything that I look for. So, and I call it finding the universal in the specific. Like, what in this story, what in these characters is something that everybody can relate to on a philosophical sense, or just in a basic human sense. Whether it's Princess Diaries, where you're finding the power within yourself to do more than you ever thought you could, which is a theme that runs through a lot of my work, from Princess Diaries to Harriet to Cinderella to The Outsiders on Broadway. I mean, that's something that's really important to me, to reinforce for people that they can be whoever they want to be and that they can make a difference in the world. The second part, which I did instinctually, but which has been, is I had to push the door open and I kept my foot in it and I pulled people in behind me, because that's what you do. There are people ahead of me that helped me, both as a lawyer and in Hollywood. And so that's what you should do. And so I kind of created my own pipeline, and at this point in my career, a lot of those people are in the prime of their career. And so it's helped me, without even realizing it, to stay relevant, to stay connected. I mean, whether it be, Shonda Rhimes was my intern, and Annie was 17. Blake Lively, I hired out of Burbank High School. Jesse Williams was with me last night. I gave him his first movie. Female directors, Senna Hamri, Patricia Regan, just because it wasn't a master plan of any kind. It's just helping people, paying it forward. And that's what I tell all of them. And they, is to continue to pay it forward.
I love that. I wanted to talk to you, Simone, about something that you've done this year, which again, a lot of people on this call would be very envious of. You launched 2 projects this year. And one of the ways you were able to do that was because you changed up your approach to funding. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Lily and Viva Verdi.
Yes, well, actually, it's been 3 projects.
Excuse me, did not even, we missed one, apologies.
So about 5 years ago, right when the world shut down, I started working on these 3 new projects, very different. Lily, Viva Verdi, and in what's now called Vow of Silence, the assassination of Annie Mae. And lo and behold, this fall, all 3 projects came out within weeks of each other. You can't make this up. Lily premiered at Hamptons, Viva Verdi premiered at Woodstock, and then Vow of Silence was broadcast the day after Thanksgiving on Hulu. And you know, it's always a miracle when any of these projects get made, right? As we all know. But then throw in the pandemic, 2 strikes, this massive change in our industry, plus, from my perspective, massive social upheaval that happened, and 2 presidential cycles. So, you know, to have those projects each, again, I come at this on widening and broadening the project and your mindset. So where does the film and the project sit and live in the world? And that is the approach, right? So for for Lily, for instance, this is very much about where does this story fit? It fits into individual philanthropists, foundations, corporate sponsorships, organizations. You know, this is really about how that project in particular was willed to be. I mean, the amount of support that came from non-traditional funding for this project is incredible. And it is a testament to what the story is about, right? The history, the legacy of Lily Ledbetter, but also the story of a woman kind of taking on and fighting the system, right? And now, you know, we're coming out with this film in such an extraordinary time. You can't make that up. So, and same with Viva Verdi. You know, this is about a retirement home in Milan for retired musicians and opera singers. And again, right? So that's a documentary. I come at my funding approaches, documentary and narrative, the same, right? Is broadening out, and where does it fit with the issue? And so Viva Verdi is very much about that kind of multi-tiered foundations, individuals, people in the theater, opera, musicians, elder care, right? So we are really pulling at all facets to support and not only fund the film here. So here's the important piece. You're building this ecosystem of funders but then also this community of audience engagement for when the distribution comes out. So this mindset goes for me from financing, marketing, distribution, outreach. And that is how then you have the collective of that going out into the world, because we all know it's so hard to break through the noise right now. So being on all, full tilt on all of these levels is really important. And so that's and with Vow of Silence as well, the assassination of Annie Mae, about murdered and missing Indigenous women. It started out as an independent film and evolved into a limited series, which is extraordinary. And that was the same approach, right? So, yeah, it's exciting and overwhelming that all of this is happening right
Same
at the
here.
time.
It'll be okay. You just book them all back to back. I love that. Laura, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I think it's incredible that we have so many people with a history with the theater on this panel too, because I think it is so important to storytelling to have that background. Working on Three Women, I would be curious what you found to be the most informative part of being a playwright that then helped you lead this show. That, I think obviously there's storytelling aspects of it, but I'm sure there's probably non-tangible things too.
Well, I had my time in the theater. I have a theater company in Chicago called Looking Glass Theater Company that I wasn't a founding member, but started relatively early with the company. We're still going strong in Chicago after many decades, which is exciting. But when I spent my time there, I was also artistic director of the company. I was the director of my plays. I did both original work and adaptation. And I produced and oversaw the development process. So I was working with other writers developing their work. And then I did, going up the ladder in TV work. So when I stepped into show running, I had already done a version of almost everything I needed to do, at least dipped my toe in. I'd looked at a budget. I'd run a, $5 million company. So I knew I knew what a show budget looked like. I knew how to talk to a lighting designer. I knew how to talk to a composer. I knew how to, work a transition with music. Spent a lot of time directing actors. I also was an actor for a period of time. So I knew how to talk to actors from the actor's point of view. I knew how to interface with the director from a director's point of view. So I was very fortunate in that I had been able to kind of do a version enough that stepping into show running and sitting in that seat, having done, a variety of things when you're coming up the ladder as a TV writer and you spend some time on set and get a little bit of that, but to be able to have I was surprised the degree to which I was prepared to do so many things as a showrunner from all of that experience I had in the theater, and was so grateful for it. Of course, there's always new challenges, and as every showrunner knows, every show is different. So even as a showrunner, it's like you're kind of rebuilding the car or whatever every time. It's always a little bit different, and you have to find your way to that specific alchemy of that group of people. But I really felt, with the exception of probably color, that was the only color correction was really the only thing, because even in the editing post, a lot of that was very new because it's unique, but there were aspects of it that still in terms of focus and music and transitions that were echoes of things I'd done before. And I do think that's something that's, just to say sort of globally, I think it's easy to discount your experience as not being quite right or not being analogous enough to be applicable. And I think it's really important for people to know that everything you're doing is feeding into the work you want to do. Your life experience, even if it feels not applicable, it really can if you're working with people, or if you're supervising people, or even if you have a really bad boss, it's teaching you how to deal with what that dynamic can feel like. You're all of it you can kind of pull in, because one of the things, as Debra was talking about, mentorship and talking to people that are on their way up, I feel like I experience a lot of frustration with people that are not where they want to be at in their career, feeling like I'm doing this job and it's not applicable, or I feel like I'm wasting my time doing this other thing that's not the dream yet. And from my own experience, although a lot of the theater that I was doing was, the dream in many ways and exciting, it wasn't ultimately where I wanted to be. And knowing now that all of that actually allowed me to feel confident and hopefully successful in doing the job that I ultimately wanted to do was really gratifying. And I think it's just true for everybody, that it's no time or job is really wasted. It all feeds in and is part of getting you to where you want to go.
I love that. I want to talk about some of your individual projects before we get into the Q&A session. And I want to remind everyone, please submit your questions to the Q&A portion, and I'll get to those at the end of the chat. But Ms. Debra Martin Chase, ma'am, I would really just like to ask you about Princess Diaries 3, but you're not going to tell me, so I'm not going to do that. But
Well,
I would
look,
maybe.
we are very close. We look, you know, we're very close, and
Okay. I know. I'm like, I'm not going to badger you about this, but every millennial woman of my age, like the restraint not to just beg you about that right now, I need you to understand.
let me put it to you like this. I am determined to get this on screen. Annie and I are locked in hand to get this to the screen. So we are hopeful for next year, to shoot next year. So it's we're moving in the right direction, but till those cameras roll.
I know.
But,
And I
but
wasn't even
we're,
going to ask you about that. I was actually going to ask you about The Equalizer, because I think what is interesting about your recent work, like I just look at how varied your projects are. Yes, you have Princess Diaries 3 that you're working very hard about, but then there's also the Equalizer television show, and then you did Being Mary Tyler Moore. And I just think if you look at those 3 projects right there, that says a lot about your producing style. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about why because a lot of people would just be doing the Equalizer, sitting up in Palisade, having a good time, and maybe not say, oh, well, I'm also going to be producing a play that you mentioned that's going to be debuting. So yeah, why you choose to keep having such a varied filmography at this point in your career?
I mean, the theater piece has been, I'm so sorry. I don't know if you can, of course it started. Um,
We
uh,
can't though. You're good.
okay, good. All right. Very, I like storytelling. And I realized a very long time ago, before TV was fashionable, that as a producer, the key for me was to find great stories that I believed in, that I was determined to get into the world, and then find the right platform for them, be it features, be it television, and now I branched into theater. I think that, of course, and telling stories about women, telling stories, as I said earlier, about people of color are super important to me. And again, they're themes that run through most of the things that I do. Not everything, but Mary Tyler Moore, it's funny, I had dinner last night with Lena Waithe, who's my producing partner on that. And for us, Mary inspired generations of women. I experienced Mary in real time. I watched it with my mother, because we were in the Mary Tyler Moore show, represented the new woman, the woman that, I was aspiring to become. And here was Lena, who found her historically, and she was inspired very much. Her comedy was inspired by Mary, etc. The theater has been a wonderful challenge at this point in my career, because I'm able to take my storytelling, take my relationships with talent, take, kind of my general knowledge of how to put something together, but it's a very different arena. And I've had incredible mentors in Mark Platt and David Stone, who teaching me, the ropes, but that's exciting to me. And so I think, as long as I'm excited about storytelling, I'm excited about sharing ideas and new talent. I mean, I found Cynthia Erivo for Harriet. She was, doing The Color Purple. She'd never done a movie before. And just watching her and saying, oh my, this is a Nova. This is a superstar, and then it's hard to believe, because this is, I don't know, 7 years ago, I'm trying to sell her. People are like, who? Who? Cynthia, who? And I was like,
And now Mark Platt's dialing you for her number so she can be in Wicked.
exactly.
Listen.
So that's exciting, and it's all rewarding and keeps me fresh and motivated.
I love that. And Robbie, I want to talk to you about Varied, but I'm just going to talk about what you have in the rumors and in the works. Because between Polly Pocket, Barney, Hot Wheels, the next Barbie, there's just so much I feel that Mattel Films is already doing. Have you tried to, in these future projects, set a blueprint for what you want, knowing what Barbie did? Or are you really going with each individual director and their each individual pitch?
I know. I hope you don't hear my lawnmower here in
This
the back.
is Mercury is in the microwave. This is crazy. We're all getting stuff this morning.
I
Sorry,
know.
folks.
That noise when I start to talk. I think that, look, Mattel was not someplace that I was like, oh, this is my dream job and I'm going to work at Mattel. I was an independent producer making movies, going to Sundance and other festivals and carrying things on my back for 20 years and trying to tell stories that mattered and that would inspire people and would be relevant in the world. And ultimately, I realized that like when you're swimming one way and the world is swimming the other way, like you gotta like look at it and say like, okay, like hit the pause button, something's got to change. And so when I was approached to meet Ynon Kreiz, who's the CEO of Mattel, I was like, oh, I don't know, Mattel, it's like it's a toy company. I mean, I'm making Burden and movies about women's abortion and Dallas Buyers Club. Like, how am I going to do this? But then I thought to myself, you know what? This, Mattel has the library is second to Disney in its IP. I mean, the bench is so deep, just having the pre-awareness of all of these titles. I mean, I have two girls. I grew up with Polly Pocket, Barney, all 8-ball. I still shake the 8-ball and ask it questions. I'm sure we all do, but I think that I thought this is a great next step for me. It's a company that's a publicly traded company. It has a huge imprint. All of these toys are sold globally around the world, and it's a great place to start from. So like in the case with Barbie, when we made Barbie, when we went on tracking, the movie had 100% awareness. I mean, that's basically impossible, but because it's sold in every brick and mortar store around the world and everybody has some sort of relationship with Barbie, it just made it easier to sort of tell that story and get it into the marketplace. So I would say for the upcoming titles, Hot Wheels, 8-ball, Polly Pocket, all of the ones that Barney, it's the same approach, which is it's not about selling toys. We're, not really interested in that. I mean, certainly that's a huge benefit and hopefully that's the halo effect, but it's about telling great stories that resonate with people. And that really matter and making really elevated content. And so the way, whether it's doing, Barney with Ao and Daniel Kaluuya at A24 or making, Hot Wheels with, JJ at Warner Brothers or Polly Pocket with, at Amazon with Lily Collins. I mean, I think it's just sort of pairing up each individual IP with sort of the right person and the right voice, and then, the right filmmaker, and just really trying to elevate these stories and tell these stories in an unexpected way has really just been my approach.
The reason why I said that is because honestly, as soon as you hear about the people that you're getting involved in these projects, you can tell that's what you're doing. But I don't think people hear that when they just see the deadline article that says there's a bunch of projects in the works. It's like, but if you really look at it, you can see that thoughtfulness in what you're creating with these filmmakers. And I'm, for one, Barney with Io and Daniel, sat.
I think people
Just
are,
sat.
I think we all have, a desire at some point to go back to our youth and our innocence. And, you wake up one day and you're like, oh, wow, how am I, how did I get here? How, it's just so interesting. So I think, I think Mattel, in a way, it gives people, a way to go back to sort of like it's the nostalgia of childhood and of wonder and of fun. And it brings you back, consciously or subconsciously to sort of those moments, and then kind of reimagining it in a way through the lens of somebody incredible like Daniel and Io and JJ, then it becomes so exciting. This sort of interpretation.
The next thing I wanted to kind of talk about, which I think is interesting, I did a conversation in South by Southwest a few weeks ago where I talked to Issa Rae producer of Insecure star, and she said, diversity needs a new publicist, and give it to her. That's a pretty great line. Because I do think there is a backlash right now, and there's a lot of hemming and hawing, and these conversations are being sort of shifted. And so I'm curious from all of you, I know that is part of who you are, that's just in your DNA, it's written into the work that you create and the filmmakers that you work with, but how do you navigate this current moment where it is a little bit harder to have a conversation maybe about female filmmaking numbers or producer numbers, or you know, something like Barbie, even where it obviously showed that you have this huge female audience that is being underserved. There's still people the next day will be being like, oh, you know, all that pink, you know what I mean? Like, how do you keep navigating the moment that we're currently in? And Simone, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, so look, I'm launching a film right now, Lily, that's like dead center in these topics, right? And so I think one of the ways is that I'm approaching all projects now is to contextualize diversity, gender, that it's not just about the, you know, those silos, right? That it's one, we can make a case it's good business, right, to be kind of holistic, but it's societal, where we're all interplaying with each other. And, you know, we've had an amazing film festival run with Lily, and I must say the audiences are so diverse. And we've got men like cheering about it and having conversations. And, you know, we're talking about like, it's not necessarily just about women, right? We kind of get pigeonholed in that. It's about economic justice. It's about workplace rights. It's about fair pay. It's about, you know, having you know, your families have economic sustainability for a lifetime, right? You know, so you can, you know, so in this case, very particular, you know, to be able to broaden out what your film is about into uh, into other perspectives of how the story will land, right? And so that's kind of what's driving me and keeping my projects going, is kind of, and especially, and also with Viva Verde, how are we looking at elder care in our society, where predominantly, you know, women are you know, their lifespans are longer. So does that mean we should only be talking about, or we can't talk about women in that way? We're talking about the collective on elder care. So I can geek out about all of those, you know, those kind of social issues, but it is about looking at DEI from this perspective of, you know, getting beyond that brand. I think getting beyond the brand of DEI, it's about something much larger and intersectional and
yeah,
complicated. So
complicated,
say
yeah.
that, complicated.
Miss Debra Martin, ma'am, I am curious if you've seen this through many waves over your 30+ year career. And so maybe I'm looking at this as not so much oracleizing what the future may hold, is how did you navigate it before? And there are any things that we can apply to this current moment, even though it is walking backwards?
Here's the thing, you know, crazy times we're in. DEI, as you were saying, as a brand, has all of a sudden taken on, you know, they're the detractors, and it's like a bad word for many people. But the truth is, the turning point in Hollywood happened about within the last decade, when Hollywood finally realized that diversity was good business. You know, before then it was like, oh, stories about women are the right thing to do, and hiring a woman director is the right thing to do, and telling stories about Black people, you need to do that forget all that, right? Because when times get hard, that's all goes by the wayside, and people go back to, okay, what's going to make money? So Robbie, listen, I thank you for Barbie, because Barbie, phenomenally huge, hit, reinforced for everybody, oh hell, women's movies do make money, and can bring on a huge global audience. So in television, Grey's Anatomy, in its 22nd season, started it with Shonda's casting, and people were like, oh my God, this casting's so fresh, and it appealed to a wider audience. And then, Scandal, ABC was very reticent to put a Black woman in the lead of an hour-long network drama. She was like the second, I think, in history. Kerry Washington became, but they were forced into it because the character was based on a Black woman, and it was Shonda, and it was Channing Dungey. And then lo and behold, it's a huge hit. So it's been one step at a time, but finally Hollywood realized that they were leaving money on the table by excluding or not making product that appealed to the whole audience, every sector of the audience. And that if you tell a good story, whether the character is Black, white, Asian, whatever, people will come. So I think while every head of DEI at every studio was let go in kind of the first wave of the economic downturn, people are still interested in making content that appeals to women and Black people, diverse people, as long as they feel it can make money, and they do believe that it fundamentally, the right thing can make money. That's a huge thing, and that's not going to go away in these difficult times. Also, the other thing is this: when I started in Hollywood, it was a big deal. Dawn Steele had just become the head of Columbia Pictures. Huge thing. Now women, my studio, Universal TV, is run by Perlina Ebokwe. You've got Dana Walden. We take for granted that women are, and we need more people of color, but it's coming, in decision-making position. Robbie, look at you, you run in Mattel. So that people, because it used to be all white men, they made a world that looked like them. Now that you have diversity with the decision makers, it is helpful, because it's not, you can't take that away.
No. And I'm just going to shout out a few. You have Nicole Brown at Sony. You have Alana Mayo at Amazon, underneath
Yep.
Jennifer Spolky at Amazon, Liz at Universal, along with Perlina and Donna. And granted, that's still too short of a list. And
But
that's just
it's, we're in. They're not, and also they are people who are very comfortable with who they are. It's some in the early days, particularly with women, they were in the, there's only room for one, and so I'm going to get there and I'm going to pull up the ladder because I don't want any competition. That's it. Now it's a sisterhood. Now it's, most women are about helping other women, and diverse people helping other diverse people, not to the exclusion of others, but we're very conscious about who we are and how we can exercise our power and influence.
lovely. I'm going to switch over to the Q&A questions. And I'm going to start with, this is a similar question from Veronica and Gustina. Apologies if I got that correct. Did the obstacles you face ever make you want to stop or pivot? And if so, what got you through? I don't know. Was anybody ever contemplate? Look,
I will take that one. About 10 years ago, I literally had 1.5 feet out the door. I was like, I'm done. It was that period where nobody was interested in stories about women or people of color. I would sit in people's offices and their eyes would roll in the back of their heads. And not that I don't do other things, but as I've been saying, that's my passion. And I really thought, I said, well, maybe the universe is telling me that it's time to move on. Been a good run. And I literally took a year. I mean, I was still working, but I just kind of opened myself up to, should I go back to practice law? I looked at, maybe Wall Street. I just looked at all kind of different things and went to seminars and just kind of opened myself up. And what I quickly realized is that, I was extremely fortunate. I was at Disney for 20 years. I had my producing deal at Disney for 20 years. And but all of a sudden I realized I had changed, Disney had changed, the business had changed, the world had changed, and I was still trying to do business in the same manner. And when you've had a good run and things go a little awry, there's a tendency to just like double down on the way you've been doing things. And so I told the story a couple of times. I was very close friends with Vernon Jordan. I'd known him my whole life. He was, a mentor. And I went to go see Vernon towards the end of that year and kind of poured my heart out and told him what was going on, what I was feeling. He sat there and he listened to me. And then he looked at me and he said, you're too old to start over. He said, you need to figure this out. You have great experience. You have great relationships. You have a great reputation, like the deal with it and figure it out, And it was the slap in the face that I needed, that journey of re-exploration and reaffirming why I was in the business and what I still had left to contribute was really, I think, key to kind of the fuel for this phase of my career, which has been going very well. So I think, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, so I very definitely, and I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad I stayed for the turn. I'm glad I stayed for theater. I'm glad I stayed.
I'm glad you stayed too, and I appreciate him being your mentor. But if you told me today that you wanted to all of a sudden do a lifestyle cooking show, I'd be like, yeah, she can do that too. There's never too old. I'll just put that out there. But I'm glad it had the good effect. But that's some fake news right there. Let's move on to Caitlin. And this is for Laura. Caitlin loved what you said about discounting experience. She would love to hear how you quiet all that internalized self-doubt that so many women have when you're trying to achieve these things.
Well, we all have it, I think, in moments. And so that it's just, I think for one, not to beat yourself up when you have the moments of that noise coming forward, to know that is normal. And I think sometimes talking, I'll just say this one anecdote where when I was preparing to showrun, because I'm like the good student I am, I had a list of about 25 showrunners that I'd gotten contact info and permission to call and contact. And I very strategically called each one and asked specific areas to get information, because I was really seeking to have like a best practice approach and kind of learn from everybody that I could before I went to showrun. And there was a showrunner of a show that was kind of a big show, and one I was really excited to learn about his experience. And I got on the phone with the showrunner, and he was talking about how, it was a bit of a learning curve for him too, because he'd never been on a set before. And he too was a playwright transitioning. And I was like, oh, because when you were in a staff writer room, as often happens, you didn't actually get to set. He said, no, I've never done television or film before. I've never been on a set before. And he was the showrunner. And I just thought, okay, I've been on a lot of sets for a lot of years now. I have all this other experience, and here's me feeling like I don't have what it takes. And or worried that might be the case. So I got to do all this homework. So I would just say, in those moments of doubt, there are so many people that are less talented than you, less prepared than you, less skilled than you, who are out there doing it. So just like as much as you can, put that doubt in a box and keep working. You just got to keep working. And even when the chatter's loud, you just got to keep working. And even if that day's work you're not thrilled about, it doesn't matter. You kept pushing forward, and that's what you got to keep doing.
Mute. You're on mute.
Jacqueline, you're on mute.
Jacqueline, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, y'all. I didn't realize I was on mute. I was just saying, those men are also so very confident. So thank you very much.
Confident, no hesitation.
Oh, very confident.
To run a
The
show,
audacity.
having literally never been on this.
Men
Yeah.
know, the thing is, like, men will know 30% of something and claim they know it all. Women need to know 70% before they, and so it's a, you know, to your point, Laura, we have to, you just got to
Get
go
that.
for it.
Yep. Jessica asked, thank you all. Jessica asked, how do you feel about production leaving in LA, and what are your thoughts to bringing it in? And actually, Robbie, I'd like to talk to you. From someone that went from independent production to Mattel, I think you could probably speak a little bit more to this than anyone else. Getting production back in LA and how we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable to me that the last 3 movies, I just came back from Morocco yesterday. We're shooting Masters of the Universe in London and Matchbox in Morocco and Budapest. And, you know, and we shot Barbie in London. So that's unbelievable. Barbie, who comes from Malibu, we're shooting the whole movie in London. And these 2 huge movies, we have to go shoot them over in Europe. So I think it's, look, I think we have to do something about getting production back here. I mean, everybody lives in Los Angeles. The movie industry exists here. It seems a little crazy to me that we have to find a way to go to Atlanta or Louisiana or Mississippi or Ohio to capture a tax credit to, you know, and then bring in all the equipment and bring in all the people that don't even live there. It's just, it's really backwards. So I feel a little encouraged that they're providing more of a tax incentive in California this year. I think that's a big start, but I think we have to do a lot more to bring production back to Los Angeles. I mean, who doesn't want to sleep in their bed? Who doesn't want to drive their daughter to school? You know, so I think these are things that people need to think about. And I think the industry needs to come together and make a push to do that. You know, so hopefully that's something that will happen over the next couple of years. I'd certainly like to see it happen, and we'll strongly advocate for it.
Love that. This is from the Win Chairs. And I think everybody can answer this one. Can we unpack the term staying relevant and how each of you do that while staying true to yourself and your taste and your mission? I'll start with you, Simone, and then I do kind of want to get an answer on this one for everyone on staying relevant.
Wow, that's a layered one. Staying relevant. So again, I keep going back to, I'm very much about what is going on in the zeitgeist, what is going on in the world, and staying relevant in that means for me, you know, where does the project and where does my passion, you know, fit in to what's happening? There's probably always some little nugget in what's going on in the world that I can relate to. So it's finding that relational piece, and then you make relevance out of it, right? So it's really about you know, us, me, you creating your own relevance, and building out from that, you know. And so I don't rely so much on someone else saying that I'm relevant or my productions are relevant. It's coming from inside and going out that way, if that makes sense. So that's and I'm not, you know, blind to what's going on in the world and what's going on in the world and how do your project relate to that.
Lovely. Sorry. Robbie, I'm going to ask you the same question next, because I think especially for this next chapter with what you're doing with Mattel Films, that's going to be a huge part of your success.
Yeah, I mean, I think that staying relevant, I mean, I think we made a very conscious choice to hire Greta Gerwig to tell the Barbie story. I mean, Barbie, you know, is about women. It's about female empowerment. It's about feminism. It's, you know, you know, in that movie, she sort of made fun of, you know, everything that sort of exists in the world. What you're talking about, I mean, how do women exist in the marketplace? And with movies like Barbie and women sort of, you know, coming together and joining hands and supporting each other as community and propping each other up. But still, you know, we're surrounded by men and, you know, the norms are not the same. And so I think it's just, you know, we can't just constantly sort of, you know, tackling these issues, you know, head on. I think also, as I was speaking about before, I think it's about the voice. I think it's about the point of view, finding people, you know, it's all about the story, you know, creating stories that feel sticky and interesting and important and indelible and provocative, that have something to say, and doing it with people that have an interesting and different point of view. And I think that that will make you relevant. I mean, it's like, I'm very encouraged looking at movies like Anora and The Brutalist and Poor Things and Parasite and all of these independent movies that are making their way into the Oscar conversation, and even Barbie, you know, that feel, you know, just sort of like a throwback to the movies that Miramax made in, you know, back in the day when I worked there. You know, it's not just about, you know, movies with swords and capes. They actually have movies that have something to say, that explore different cultures and race and you know, just sort of, you know, is more of a microcosm of what is going on in the world today. And those are the stories that I would advocate for. And even in my toy lens, in my toy world, I try to sort of find a way to bring what is relevant in the world into sort of whatever toy, whether it's the Viewmaster or whether it's 8-Ball, kind of like, how do we sort of bring that back to today and find a way to tell the story? So that's how we try to stay relevant at Mattel.
Laura, I'll bring it to you next. Same question.
I feel like my answer has echoes of what's been said before. I feel like I think it's important to be aware of what's in the zeitgeist, but I also feel like you can't really chase it. And that, as Simone is saying, that it needs to really come from a place of passion and something that you deeply care about. And that, as Debra and Robbie said, that it's these very specific idiosyncratic aspects to you as a writer. Like for me, that's what I try and dig into, what is specific to me, but that the core idea I'm exploring needs to have that universal resonance that Debra was speaking of, that it needs to be doing both. You need to be digging, or I try and dig very deeply to what I specifically can bring, what my voice, what my vision, what I care about can bring to something, and that it really is built around a big idea and a big why that is very important to me and has like deeply felt by me. That's a question around that idea, not a statement. But
Yeah.
that hopefully that it is, you know, that although it's deeply specific, it also will have that universal resonance. But I also think it's tough. You know, we also, I just want to say, we get so much no. And the other thing in terms of like resilience and perseverance is you got to get really comfortable with hearing no and meeting some dead ends, even about things that you really care about passionately. And it doesn't mean they're dead forever, but sometimes they might be dead for a little while. And being able to sort of, you know, persevere through that. And, you know, that I think trying to make something that you feel like is good, people are going to love. I just feel like you can't, it's very hard to work from the outside in. Like you really have to try and stay true and work from the inside out, knowing that even when you do that, and even when you make something that you believe is undeniable, it sometimes will be denied, and you still can love it and hold it dear to you and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. for you, Miss Deborah Martin Chase, ma'am, I think I'm going to change it and ask you, because I think I could have asked this to all of you, but one of the problems when you become a successful producer is you're busy making things. So you don't necessarily have the time to be in that informational sponge point. How do you, what tangible things or tangible people sometimes it's maybe your assistant, sometimes it may be somebody on your production team. Do you have people or things that you sort of try to keep in practice so that you stay dialed in even when you are very busy and trying to produce a lot?
Yes. Yes. But I also tell you, I'm bi-coastal. I'm and these days I'm based in New York and also live in Los Angeles. We shoot The Equalizer here for the last 5 years. And it's about, for me, it's about personally still staying in the world, you know? One of the reasons I like my life in New York is that I have friends that are doing everything. They're on Wall Street, they're in fashion, they're in nonprofit, yada, 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 yada. And so, you know, I love Los Angeles, but I think one of the problems with LA is that it's an industry town. And so every dinner party you go to, everybody's in the business. What'd you watch on TV last night? As opposed to, and so it's important for me to be in the world, to have my own sense of what's going on in the arts, what are the cultural trends that are coming, and both, it just keeps me fresh as a person and it influences me as a creator. So, and then to your point, I have a lot of, I continue to work with a lot of up and coming people. I had dinner last night with Lena Waithe. I knew Lena before Lena was Lena, and and she was, last night, it was like, this is my perspective, what my generation feels, and I keep an open mind and an open heart. That's really important. That old saying, as I got older, I realized that I knew less. When I was young, I thought I knew everything, and as I got older, I realized I knew. I want to learn. I want to hear. I want to, because that is really, really important to staying fresh, and working with fresh talent. I just opened a play Monday night here on Broadway with Brandon Jacob Jenkins, who won the Tony last year for Appropriate. It's called Purpose. He's a brilliant young writer. What he has to say in this play is of the moment and reflective of his perspective, both his generation and who he is. And so that keeps me exciting. That keeps me, motivated and interested. So yes.
I love that. I actually wanted to talk a little bit about this. And Deborah, you've already talked a little bit about mentorship, but I want to direct it to some of the other ladies. Talk a little, and I'm going to direct you with a different one. Robbie, I'll start with you. Can you talk about your approach to mentorship and how you try to keep that as a part of your daily production? Because again, sometimes when you're busy doing, you're not thinking about that stuff. So I know it's something that you have to prioritize, and you can't have the work that you have unless you're prioritizing it.
No, absolutely. Look, I have a small team of people that work for me. I have 9 people in my film group at Mattel. My right hand has worked with me for 12 years. He started as my assistant. Everybody else in my department, has either been an assistant, has been promoted. I mean, there are a few people certainly that we've, come from the outside, but I do believe in sort of, supporting the people that work for you and grooming people. I think it's something that I just really, really believe in. I think you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with, truly. A good idea can come from anybody. I call everybody back on my phone sheet. I know I know in Hollywood, we have all these crazy things, rolling calls, and she's not, it's such a weird thing. I just try to be as like human and as personal as I can be with anything in my life. I pick up the phone, I call people, I write people notes, I look at them in the eye. I believe I have an open door policy in my office. I sit down. What can I do for you? Who can I introduce you to? Give me 3 people that you want to meet in this business, but I really challenge the people that work for me to, it's like, I find sort of, and I don't mean to sort of say these younger generations, like you know, they had, it's just a very, very different thing. I think the work ethic is a little different. I think, you know, it's very different, I think, than coming up in the business where, you know, I would, you know, working for Harvey and Bob, you know, watching, you know, I don't even know, 10 movies a week and reading so many scripts. And, you know, it was just a very, very different time. I find a lot of people they don't even know what Citizen Kane is. So I'm encouraging people constantly to, the only way that you can make great movies is by, you know, understanding and identifying with great voices. It all comes from the voice and from the filmmaker, from the writing, starting with a great script. That is the foundation, and having somebody that can, you know, has a vision that can bring it to life. And so I really encourage the people that work for me to, you know, to find those voices, to go to Sundance, to go to South by. I went to Sundance myself this year for 5 days so that I could go and see movies, right? Because, you know, it's so hard to get to the movie theater, and I love that community experience and being with people. But I would just say, not to get off subject, but mentorship is so important. I think it's so important to grab people by the arm, to take them with you, to, you know, to explain to them, you know, sort of what worked for you in your career, what didn't. You know, this is a very, very hard, challenging business. And we all need help. I need help. I wish that I had had a mentor, somebody that told me, you know, it's okay, Robbie, like, that didn't work, but, you know, but I spent so many days in my car driving to work, and I'd pull my car off to the side of the road and I would cry for 10 minutes, and then I would just go, okay. And then I get back in my car and, get to work and pull it all together. So I think it's important to mentor people, to be present for people, to talk to people about what works, what doesn't work. And it's something that, you know, especially having, you know, two young women, girls, I really, really believe in supporting community and supporting women.
Debra Martin Chase, ma'am, I wanted to ask you a different kind of question around mentorship, because I'll put it to you this way. There's probably a lot of people maybe ringing your phone being like, hey, how can I get, and I think it's a delicate dance when you are a potential mentee that is maybe has a relationship with someone or is trying to develop a relationship with someone. There's a way that you can do it that would be successful, and there's a way that you could do it that would not be successful. So I'd be curious if you could maybe tell us, what is the best way if somebody is trying to approach someone for mentorship?
You know, here's the thing. I don't, because it's funny. I literally have had people, and I understand because I'm, there are not a lot of me. So, I get it. But who say, I want you to be my mentor. Like, I'll be at an event speaking. They'll come up afterwards. Can you be my mentor? That's not how it works. It really comes out of building a relationship. And it's got to be, for me, it's seeing someone that I see the spark in. I see the spark, that I see the drive, who I think is serious, because we all know, every one of us on here, you have to really want this to make it happen. This is a tough business. And so it's a combination of talent, self-confidence, not arrogance, self-confidence, and determination. You're going to be willing to put in the work. You're going to want this bad enough so that when Laura says, as we all know, when you get the no's, you're going to shed the tears, and the next morning get up and say, I'm going to make this happen, So I'm always looking for people that move me, that, when I can see the fire in their eyes, and who approach me in an open and determined way, but again, and who you can tell are about something, It's hard. I understand, you're on the other side. You're like, how do I get in? And I need somebody to help me. But I think it's just, so I would say, identify the people, start a relationship, but it's got to evolve on its own.
That's very well said. Yes, I can imagine you getting bum rushed after a panel. I could absolutely see that because they're like, that's Debra Martin Chase. I'm going to find a way to talk to her. I get it. I'm not saying I would do that, but I understand the need sometimes. I'm going to bring it to this next question. Again, it is two people kind of asking the same question, but Anna and Kara, they would like to know, all of you have talked about how you want to bring a team of women with you. You want to advocate for mentorship and advocate for other people in the industry. But how do you navigate those some women who are not necessarily as interested in uplifting other ones, where you find that they do maybe still approach things with that there can only be one Highlander approach? How do you navigate, yeah, trying to find the ones that can lift you up and avoid the ones that are trying to bring others down? I'll start with you, Laura. Sorry, no, it's a hard one.
It's a
but
toughie.
I've
It's a toughie. I mean, I think when you're embarking on, I work with a lot of creative producers. Producers will come to me often with IP, and I'll partner with them, and then we'll partner with the studio, and then sell it to a network. So it's different groups, and I will do some calls before I partner with people, just to get a sense of what they're like. I don't think you can ever, I don't know, you can't always know, because also somebody who is great for somebody else might not be great for you. I think, unfortunately, sometimes you just have to, get through a challenging situation as best you can, and then hold close the people that feel like your people, because that's the key to me, is finding those people that make you enliven you, that make you feel like you're great at what you do, whose ideas you can't wait to hear about, where there's electricity and excitement in the collaboration. They make you better at what you do. All, like that really like delicious combination. And when you find that, just like hold on to it and keep trying to hang on to it and build on it. And whether though that dynamic is happening with someone, who you're working with as a producer, whether it's, as Robbie says, an assistant who that you then want to have forever, which is the case for me. My writer's assistant for 3 Women became my number 2 because she had incredible producing experience. She was new to writing, but very experienced as a producer, and ended up like being the greatest creative partner. And I never want to not work with her again. So more than like avoiding the bad, which is, I think, unfortunately, a little bit inevitable. You're going to have some bad partnerships and bad experiences. Like, you got to get through them as best and as professionally as you can. But the bigger thing to me is keep your eye out for the goodness. Keep your eye out for the electricity and the excitement and the people that build you up and make you feel great and make you better at what you do. And like, lean into that and focus on that as much as you can.
I love that. We're getting short to the end of time, and I wanted to make sure I got this one last question to everyone sort of out there. And Robbie, I'm going to start with you because you've mentioned Honora a few times, and I've been asking a lot of my panelists that I've been doing questions, asking them this question. When Sean Baker accepted his award for Best Director, he kind of made a rallying cry about the communal experience of people going to the theater and how theaters are very much in trouble in the current state. And like, basically he got on his soapbox about the industry. And we're kind of in a bit of a soapbox time. And maybe it's that, maybe it's something else, but you've got a minute and a half on the mic. What is your soapbox cry as you sort of accept this panel to be like, this is something that people need to be paying attention to that they are not? And if you could get on your soapbox about it, what is it?
Well, I mean, I think there's so many things. I mean, that would be another whole panel. But I mean, look, I just to start with Sean Baker, yes, I absolutely think that, sadly, I feel like streaming has sort of, destroyed the theatrical experience in so many ways. The idea of people coming together and having community and experiencing a movie and feeling people, you know, feeling the audience, you know, the hearing people breathe and laugh and cry. And that to me is something that I grew up on that. And that's something that I believe, I'm so happy that it's coming back again, that Barbie helped with that I was a help bringing people back to the movie theater. I think we all need to see movies as community. We cannot let the movie theaters die. And I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with him. And I think just keep continuing to tell stories that matter, you know, whether it's, in Dallas Buyers Club or Honora or The Brutalist. Look, we're experiencing so many challenging things in the world right now. What's going on in Israel and, you know, is incredibly disturbing. Just the world, the government. I mean, every day it's another headline. I don't think any of us can kind of bear it. But I think it's just to continue to tell great stories, to work with great filmmakers, tell stories that matter, and you know, that is something that I believe in, that has been such a huge part of my career, that I will continue to do, because I do truly believe that, you know, movies and television, I mean, it is an art form that actually can touch people and grab a hold of people in a way that nothing else can. Probably more than books and more than, you know, the news or anything else. So I think that we just need to continue to do that, and tell stories that matter.
Lovely, 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 lovely. I'm going to bring it to you, Simone. Same question. Big get on soapbox.
Yes. Look, it's finding people with growth and opportunity mindsets. And whatever strategies you need to do on a personal level to keep that noise away and, you know, put up your shield towards keeping on that trajectory. What's your North Star? What's the purpose in a larger perspective of my project in the world? We can't afford now, you know, I know it's cliche, now more than ever, we can't afford now to pull back, to put our pencils down and say, I'm going to shut off for the next how many years to get through. It is so imperative, I think, for artists and filmmakers to have our voice and stories out there in the world. And bringing up people around you, funders, supporters, your audience that have that growth mindset, there is so much good also happening out there. And tapping into that, I think, is my soapbox these days.
I love that. Laura?
Oh, those were such good answers. I really, just coming from the theater, I do feel like community is really important. And I think we can get so obsessed with numbers, like how big a thing was or how many people saw a thing, that I'm trying to and encouraging people. Everything feels so overwhelming right now, just to celebrate small victories. That if you wrote a page today, and to share those small victories with people, and being in an actual place with people that support you and believe in you. And that if you do a little reading of something and it's only 10 of your friends there, but they're cheerleading you and they're loving on you and it's making you feel like you can move forward, that is, to me, as needs to be like taken in as deeply as if you have X many followers, whatever, like the real people contact with the real people that believe in you, and just celebrating the small victories of moving forward and taking care of each other.
Oh, that's so well said. It's Debra Martin Chase, ma'am. I'll give you the last word on that. What's your soapbox? We only have about a minute or two.
Okay. Being content creators is a huge responsibility as well as a huge opportunity. And so in these really difficult times, we have the chance to continue to make a difference, continue to tell stories that bring attention to the human condition, stories that bring us all together at a time when so much is trying to divide us by gender, by race, by religion. We can tell stories that are the universal in the specific, because the things, our similarities are far greater than our differences as human beings on this earth, and we can reinforce that. As producers, in everything we do, we can provide opportunities for others. We have, Princess Diaries, Adele Lim is our director. This is her, she did one little movie. She wrote Crazy Rich Asians. She's the best person for the job. But it's huge that we have an Asian woman directing this major studio movie. And that will create more, it inspires people and it creates more opportunity. So I just encourage all the foot's coming off they're not going to be pressure. The pressure outside is going to be to ignore diversity, to ignore inclusion, to ignore advancement for women and protecting our rights, etc. We have the opportunity to continue to inspire people to adhere to these values.
So well said. Well, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank the incredible folks at the PGA for putting this on. I, again, just want to thank everyone, people from the Wing Committee, as well as everyone else. I'm so happy to have been here, and I want to thank you all for watching.
Thank you. You did a great job. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.